Okay, I guess it's 1:05, well, 6:05. I'm in Nairobi, so it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I think it's about 5 past, right? So I'm gonna get started. So thank you to all of you for calling in this evening. This is the fourth Saturday, I think, that we've done this. For those of you who don't know, Les Bleus was founded in 2014 in New York City and was a monthly reading series up until this past October, where we'd host 4 different writers in a different person's apartment all over the city. So it was a really nice way to see into all kinds of people's apartments, but then also to listen to readers from different stages in their career on living room floors, and yeah, just enjoy that community together. And so when the lockdown started, I thought it'd be a nice idea to bring this back online. No, okay. Every Saturday night, and so that's what we've been doing. And tonight we have 5 amazing readers. We have Adrienne, Raphel, Jeffrey Colvin, Jennifer Steil, Julian Tepper, and Lulu Miller. I'm actually going to make sure that Lulu is on. Lulu, are you here?
I am here.
Yes, someone sees her? Okay, awesome. Hi, Lulu. So if everybody could please mute their microphones, I'm going to pass it over to Adrienne to get us started.
So, hi, Paige. Can everyone hear me okay?
Hi, Adrienne.
Everyone can hear me? Thank you so much for hosting, and thank you to all the fellow readers. I'm just so thrilled to be reading with all of you, and it's so delightful to see everyone's faces and to see and know that everyone is here. This is really great. Really, these kinds of readings have been a huge balm, anchor, name your saving grace word in these times. So I'm going to read a bit from my book, which is Thinking Inside the Box, Adventures with Crosswords and the Puzzling People Who Can't Live Without Them. I thought I would read in honor of what we're going through, and in particular, we might be playing more games with our loved ones or spending more time with our loved ones, which could be a benefit of the quarantine. I'm going to read a little bit from a part of the book. So the book is, as the title points out, it's like a history of the crossword, but I also sort of blend it with some first-person reporting. And I'm going to read from a part of the book that's a little more personal. I think my parents and my brother, I think, are on here somewhere. And I'm really grateful to be quarantining with my parents in northern Vermont, as we were saying at the beginning of the call. I'm quite close to Jennifer's parents right now. Close yet so far. So I'm going to be reading to you from northern Vermont, from a part of the book that's more about my family. So this is from the middle of a chapter that talks about a thing called the American Crossword Puzzle Tournament, which is essentially the biggest crossword puzzle tournament. It happens annually. It should happen annually every March. This March it's gotten postponed, but this part of the book talks about that. I'm average at crosswords. I'm a hunt and peck solver. I comb the puzzle, find the answers I know, plop them in, and start sifting again. I admire cryptic crosswords from afar, like bonsai. But games run in my blood. Both of my sets of grandparents are from Atlantic City, New Jersey, a town that has always made its legal and less than legal living through games. Back in the radio days, my great-grandmother Sarah was once on a quiz show. The host asked her, "Is Mickey Mouse a dog or a cat?" "Cat," she'd snapped. My mom's great-great-uncle Benny, according to family lore, took the rap for Nookie Johnson, the mobster who ruled Atlantic City in the 20s. On the other side of the family, as tiny girls, my grandmother and great-aunt used to run the numbers from their father's boarding house lobby to the bookie's back room in the corner candy store. They were the perfect criminals, since they had no idea they were doing anything wrong. By the time I knew them, my grandparents' gamesmanship had mellowed. My mom's parents timed breakfast to The Price is Right. My dad's parents timed lunch to the Newlywed Game, and they often met for dinner and Jeopardy. My family finds it difficult to enter willingly into competitions when we don't know if we'll be above average, but we're great at taking risks when we know we'll come out on top. We compete amongst each other to see which one of us is the most competitive. Like a slightly less fraught version of J.D. Salinger's Glass Family, in which all the children receive scholarship money from the quiz show It's a Wise Child, my brother and I grew up in a game world. Dad turned daily life into a series of contests, the game of what to have for breakfast, the game of going to the drugstore to pick up the newspaper and cutting the line to put down the exact amount of money. Things my dad likes, racket sports, bridge, solving math problems in his head. Things he hates, yoga, meditation, ice fishing. My mother is the best at crosswords, and my father is the most puzzle-oriented, but my brother, Ben, is the family's true games person. Ben, a data analyst by day, is a trivia host by night, working various pubs through a franchise called Geeks Who Drink. Ben memorized sports almanacs as a kid and could spit out facts about Super Bowl winners and baseball players' RBIs like a jukebox. When he was 7 years old, Ben burst into tears on the Little League field when his team lost. My mother tried to console him by telling him that if he was so upset, he didn't have to compete. Ben turned his wet face to her and said, "But Mommy, I love competition." In 5th grade, Ben placed in the top 10 of New Jersey State Geography Bee. In high school, he captained the Scholars Bowl team to a state victory. Ben has roped us all into the invitation-only online trivia contest Learned League. I'm in the lowest possible tier. At age 30, Ben became a Jeopardy champion. He also became an internet meme when clips of his extreme frustration with the buzzer. He pressed the button so rapidly and so often that the little joystick juddered in his hand as though he were trying to drill his way through the lectern, landed on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. My thing is Boggle, a rapid-fire word search in which players shake a 4x4 square, scribble the words they see over the course of 3 minutes, and then compare lists. You get points for words no one else has, and you get more points for longer words. There are 2 basic Boggle strategies. Either you blitz and write down everything, or you hunt for Bantu wildebeests, the long words that will garner you many points, and assume that everyone else will cancel each other out on the little words and no one else will find your rare game. I once challenged Will Shortz, the New York Times crossword editor, to a Boggle match. Not to brag, but we tied. A few weeks before the American Crossword Puzzle Tournament, I told my parents I was going to Connecticut for this crossword puzzle tournament. I meant this as information. They saw it as an invitation. "Oh, is that the one in the movie?" my mother said. "I've always wanted to go to that." "Maybe we'll come too." "Can we go to a bridge tournament instead?" asked my father. "You should write a book about bridge." "Neither one of you has to come," I said. "You two go," Dad said. "I'd be in last place anyway." They both came. My father and mother worked together, running a consulting and publishing firm that my father inherited from his parents. I'm sitting in it right now. 2 decades ago, they moved our family from southern New Jersey to northern Vermont, installing their office on the top floor of their house. They share a cell phone. Ben called me a few hours after I'd spoken. "Will Mom and Dad be mad if I don't come to your thing?" Ben fretted. "I think they're expecting me to go, but I have geek brunch that Sunday and I just don't know." "I don't know why they're going," I said. "Why would you think we're going? There's no reason anyone has to go to it."
Where's the top to the Cuisinart?
"Because it's games," said Ben. On the train, I casually glanced at the fellow passengers, sizing them up to see if any of them were my competition. The crossword is a commuter's sport. Solvers can clock themselves by how many stops it takes to complete the grid. But the Amtrak from Boston to Stamford didn't prove to be a useful clock, since there was too much time between stations to measure prowess by cities. I wasn't really going to the tournament to compete. I was going to interview, observe, soak in the atmosphere, become inaugurated into the crossword cult. But as I swanned down the Northeast Corridor, I couldn't help but get that spark that contests always give me. Somehow, improbably, with no Rocky-esque montage of training, I saw a vision of my Cinderella crossword story that through some incredible osmosis or sheer luck, I'd magically be imbued with a prodigious talent and whiz past the others. Or all my competitors would find themselves simultaneously struck with lethargy, lotus eaters style, and would loll about as I soared ahead. I knew that I had less than 0% chance of making it into the finals, that I was there to learn, not to compete. But deep down, a tiny kernel of magical thinking whispered to me that maybe I would win it all. I'll stop there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. I know it's kind of awkward that everyone's on mute, so I'll just clap and then we'll have a big clap at the end. For starters, because I don't want to get distracted with what I'm going to say, I'm going to put the link to Adrienne's book in the chat. Can't do two things at once. Sorry, 1 second. I wanted to say, so I'm one of these people that you speak of, Adrienne. I have to do the New York Times crossword every single day, even though I'm fully aware that after Thursday, I can probably only get 2 of the answers. And on Thursday, it's a little touch and go. But I absolutely love that. And I think that I was reading that they took the crossword competition. Didn't they do it online last month?
They did. They sort of, somebody like pulled it together in like 36 hours and did a crosswords from your couch, like a couch words competition. And they got 1,000 people to do it. It was awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, we're all just trying to figure out how to do things a little bit differently. So it's great that they were able to do that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Adrienne, for reading. And did I put it? Yes, I put the link. Oh, people are making so many amazing comments. I can't see. Yes, I did put the link to Adrienne's book in the chat. So please support these awesome readers and independent bookstores. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jeffrey Colvin. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Paige, and thank you, Adrienne. I enjoyed your reading very much. My novel is called AFRICAVILLE, and it is about 3 generations of one family. The matriarch, Kat Ellis Seabolt, is from a small village in Nova Scotia. And that's about all I'll say about the novel itself. And then I'm going to read a few pages from the opening of the novel, and then a scene that occurs later on in the novel. The novel opens in 1918 when a strange malady is afflicting the village and affecting babies in the village. And so the opening chapter, the title is Dog Trot Fever, Nova Scotia, 1918. Newborns are never afflicted with the malady. The swollen tongue, the reddish throat, the raw cough seem to afflict only babies older than 6 months. By the spring, in the village situated on a small knuckle-shaped peninsula just north of Halifax, all 5 of the stricken babies have now developed a high fever. Having no luck with sweet milk and lemon bitter, worried mothers administer castor oil mixed with camphor, then a tea of beer's root seeped with beech ash and clover. When desperate, they even place a few charms under the mattresses of the beds where the stricken babies lie crying. Nothing works. In mid-April, with 3 more babies now suffering from the malady, health department nurses visit the village, their faces frozen even before they have examined a single new case. Why our children? Several mothers standing in the yard of one house want to know. Hadn't Halifax already given enough babies in the fire that leveled 10 square blocks of the city months before, when the munitions ship exploded in the harbor? Then again, those had been white babies. No colored babies had died in that explosion. Was it now Woods Bluff's turn to lose infants? And if so, how many? 5, 10, all 22. The following week, after 2 of the feverish babies die, the mothers turn to the grandmothers, although many are leery of this option. Already, several grandmothers have suggested that since the home remedies haven't worked, and since neither nurse nor doctor has useful medicines, the afflicted infants must be bad luck babies. It is an expression the mothers haven't heard since they were children, though the fear of having a bad luck baby has terrorized mothers on the bluff as far back as 1790. That was the year the first groups of cabins sprang up across the bluff, displacing the foxes, hare, and moose that ran through the thick Christmas ferns and sheep laurel. Back then, when no medicine could reinvigorate a baby whose body had begun to show the outlines of bones, smothering was sometimes recommended. Take no action, and bad luck might infect the entire village. Best to end the child's suffering midday, when injurious spirits would likely be bedside feeding on the moist of a week's baby's last breath. Yet several mothers are unconvinced the deceased infants are bad luck babies. And even if the now suffering babies are saddled with bad luck, who's to say those old tales of smothering are true? Had anyone actually seen a mother place a blanket or a pillow over a child's face? And most important, for these new cases, by what evidence will we make the diagnosis? The grandmothers had ready answers. For several descendants of the Virginian who came up to Nova Scotia in 1772 as a messenger in the British Army, a feverish baby had to be put to sleep if the father had recently had a limb severed above the knee or elbow. Death was also imminent if the baby's fever came during the same month as the mother's birthday. And for the granddaughter of the Congolese woman who in 1785, dressed as a man, sailed into Halifax Harbor on a ship out of Lisbon, Portugal, a feverish baby had to be smothered if the newborn was smaller than a man's hand. And for the largest group of grandmothers, those descended from the nearly 200 Jamaicans who landed in Halifax Harbor in 1788 after being expelled by British soldiers from their island villages fomenting rebellion, a feverish baby's fate was sealed if the child coughed up blood during the same month a traveling man arrived on your stoop selling quill turpentine, goat leather, or gunpowder. Hadn't such a vendor made the rounds in Woods Bluff the month before? Why continue to nurse such a child? Death already had a square toe on the baby's throat. It was only a matter of days, a week maybe if the baby were a girl. And then the next section I'm going to read from takes place later on in the novel. The matriarch of the family, Kath Ella Seabolt, has a son now. His name is Adrienne, and he is 16. And Adrienne has been left at a summer camp put on by a private school while his parents go off to Italy. And in this scene, he's talking with a boy at the camp when they run into 2 other boys on the campus of the private school. The boys cross the south lawn down one of the long diagonal brick walkways. At the center of the lawn, Adrienne leaps over a row of tulips. A few yards on, they approach the Hindu temples. There, Tyrell Levesque is leaning against the lip of a fountain, emptying a pebble out of his shoe. As they get closer, Tyrell puts on his large sunglasses and starts speaking French with his cousin, who arrived late on Monday from St. Lucia. Despite the cool air, both of the boys' dark faces are shining. Well, what do you know, Tyrell says when Adrienne gets close. Here comes Stringer Beaner. That's not my name, Adrienne says. Philip Casson called you that at dinner yesterday. What do you want, Tyrell? Is your mother coming back to visit? How many times are you going to ask me that? 300. She's in Italy. Tyrell slaps his cousin on the stomach with the back of his hand. Wait until you see his mother. She'll break your heart. His mother's sick, Orlando says. She's been in the hospital. For a moment, Terrell looks like he's wondering what to say. As Etienne and Orlando continue on, Terrell and his cousins follow. Did you tell him you think his mother ought to drop that white man? The cousin asks Terrell. You've never met his father, Orlando says. Still thinks she ought to drop him, the cousin says. Terrell glares at his cousin. You'd better not say that when she comes back. Why not? Because then his mother won't speak to me. But you've already said it yourself, the cousin says. Terrell punches his cousin's shoulder. Then he steps to Etienne. Aren't you embarrassed to have a white father? Aren't you embarrassed to have a bald-headed one? The cousin and Orlando laugh. You ought to be embarrassed, Stringer Beaner. Etienne stares at a little spit bubble in the corner of Terrell's mouth. Yesterday, when he returned to the dormitory from orchestra lessons to dress for the afternoon sports, he discovered that someone had sprinkled cinders from the running track onto his underwear drawer. It must have been Tyrell. I think you need to get a new game, Tyrell. Why don't you tell me something I haven't heard before? Etienne looks white himself, the cousin says. But he's not, Terrell says. He's black. Aren't you black, Stringer Beaner? Aren't you black, Etienne? Terrell and his cousin stand straighter, both sets of shale-colored eyes demanding an answer. The gummed-up zipper on Etienne's bomber jacket has been bothering him all day. With a quick jerk, now the slide moves all the way up. I'm black if I want to be. You can't choose to be black, Tyrell says. You can if you look white like Etienne does, Orlando says. Look, his arms are as light as mine. Terrell makes a face. I'm glad I'm black. Etienne laughs. You don't mean that. Terrell lands a fist to Etienne's chest, sending Etienne stumbling back. When Etienne recovers, he swings, knocking the sunglasses off Tyrell's face. Orlando and the cousin back up as the boys wrestle down to the walkway. The two boys continue tussling on the grass until a young camp assistant rushes over. The assistant hesitates, unsure which boy to reach for first. Finally, he seizes Terrell's arm. You know you're black, Terrell says as the assistant helps him to his feet. Etienne frowns at the tear in his jacket sleeve. He looks over at Terrell, still in the assistant's grip. You can't tell me what I am. I can be whatever I want. Wrestling free, Tyrell picks up his sunglasses. He puts them on his face, which is now as hard as the stone walkway. Believe that, and you're a fool.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for reading from that. This week especially I think there's somebody on this call right now from Nova Scotia, and I got to spend a lot of time in the East. I'm from Canada, from Ontario, and I got to spend a lot of time out there as a kid. And I've actually read your book, and so I highly recommend it. Yeah, and so I highly recommend it to everybody. And it's so interesting to see how, the word I'm looking for, like prescient of a subject matter that still remains to be, and how you can find some humor with it in your writing, I think is really interesting. So for everybody here, oh yeah, and Elizabeth England has added, the sections are so different in transporting, which I completely agree with. Thank you, Elizabeth. I am going to copy the link right there for Jeffrey's book, so please make sure to get it. So thank you again, Jeffrey, very much. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer Steil.
Hi, good evening. I am talking to you from London, England this evening. So it's around 11 my time, and my 10-year-old is still awake, which she is not supposed to be, but I think there was just too much excitement in the flat. So I don't actually live in London. I live in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, but I've just been evacuated from Uzbekistan with my daughter for complicated reasons I won't go into now. So we are in temporary quarters in London, and so it's something of a coincidence that I am reading from my book, Exile Music, from exile of a kind, although my characters have it way worse than we do. So I'm not complaining. I'm gonna read a section, very short section from the middle of the book. But my book, Exile Music, is a novel. It starts in 1928 and ends around 1967. And the main character is 10 when the book starts and in her mid-40s when it ends. But she's a Viennese girl who's from a musical family, a family of Jewish musicians. Her dad is a viola player with the Vienna Philharmonic, and her mother is an opera singer. So she grows up around music. Music is an integral part of their life. It's an integral part of Austrian culture. And she's around 10 or 11 when they flee the Nazis and end up in Bolivia, which was one of only 3 countries at the time still granting visas to Jews. So they end up in La Paz, Bolivia, where I lived for 4 years. So I know the geography a bit. It's quite high, 12,000 feet, 4,000 meters, depending on where you are. And it can be quite difficult to adjust to altitude. And I met some of these Jewish refugees while I was living there. And that's where I got the idea for the book. And it unspooled from there. So I'm gonna read a section, I hope I didn't just lose it. So once Orly and her family end up in La Paz, they all adapt in different ways. Her father can't function without music, and her mother stops singing entirely. Anyway, so this is a music-related scene for our Saturday night. Over the first few weeks of our new life in La Paz, we pieced together a home from 3 straw mattresses, donated dishes, borrowed books, and a table and chairs crafted from packing crates. As soon as these set pieces were in place, my father sat down on a crate after dinner one night and took out his viola for the first time. He hadn't opened the case since we arrived, although he had often played with other musicians on the ship. Now, he ran his fingers over the instrument like he was relearning its surfaces. He tightened his bow and drew it across the D string. We both winced. But half an hour later, as I lay on the floor reading at his feet, a stroke of his arm drew forth the flight of notes that began Fantasia Chromatica. My heart leapt after those notes, following them like butterflies up a path it knew well. It didn't matter that his fingers were stiff and weak, that they faltered at that speed. Listening to him play reminded me of times when I didn't know I was thirsty until I started drinking, and then the whole glass went down. Home had been with us all along. It lived in the air shimmering around my father's strings. Well, there it is. He lifted his eyes from the viola and smiled a real smile, the first I could remember seeing since the Philharmonic expelled him. So, what shall I play for you? I closed the book of fairy tales on my lap that I had borrowed from the Grubers. Schumann's Märchenbilder, the fairy tale songs? Nothing simpler. I don't want to start panting and faint in the middle of it. You just did Fantasia Chromatica, I sighed. All right, a waltz then, Strauss. I glanced over at my mother lying on a mattress, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. She did not stir. My father pulled the viola from his chin and rested it on his knee. No waltzes, he said. I think I'm finished with waltzes. Well, don't ask me then, I said irritably, turning back to my book. Play whatever you like. I couldn't see the harm in playing a waltz. Hadn't we already given up enough of Austria? We had to give up Strauss now too? A mild amusement tugged at my father's mouth. Which Märchenbilder piece then? I suppose you want Lebhaft. Lebhaft, lively or spirited, was my favorite of the 4. But I thought about how fast my father's fingers would have to move on the strings and how he had struggled with the Fantasia. No, I'm in the mood for langsam mit melancholischem Ausdruck tonight. Please, I'm very sorry about my German accent. And my husband isn't here to correct my German. Anyway, no, I'm in the mood for langsam mit melancholischem Ausdruck tonight. This piece, slowly with melancholy expression, was one he'd played me in the evenings before bed, its gentle rhythms drawing me irresistibly into dreams. It seemed to describe the undercurrent of our life in La Paz, the way my mother drifted up and down its streets, slowly, with melancholy expression. A wise choice, Kleiner Hase. Tucking the viola back under his chin, my father lifted his bow and played me langsam mit melancholischem Ausdruck. Sorry to torture you all. Within the first 6 notes, I was in Vienna. I was in my own bed, soft sheets drawn to my chin, Lebkuchen tucked in my arms. I'd forgotten how swiftly music could transport me. His fingers were still clumsy on the strings, even I could see it, and his rhythm staggered, but he played it all the way through. And then he started again. Scooting across the floor to lean against one of the crates, I closed my eyes. As the vibrations of his strings stirred the air around me, the small muscles along my spine spasmed and then unclenched. My stomach relaxed into roundness. My hands fell to my lap. Fear that had secreted itself in my body crept away. I let the sounds move over me like warm hands. When I heard my father play, I began to believe in our life here. So that's.
Jennifer, I think you might have muted yourself. Here.
Okay, wait, in the middle of the reading?
No, just in those last few seconds.
Oh, sorry.
You closed the book and you said, okay, and then we didn't hear what you said right after that, but just in those couple seconds.
It wasn't important. And just to say that I think that that's probably enough for now. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
I just want to say, you know, it's so interesting. I have a poor connection, so sorry. This is Sarah. It's interesting you're reading a piece about how music transports someone, and that's like what I feel these readings are doing. You know, like those first 6 notes bring her back to Vienna, and to me, like keeping this alive, you know, those first 3 sentences like bring me back to, you know, a time before what we're going through now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
That definitely translates to now. I've copied the link in the chat. And Jennifer, I never knew that about Bolivia. That's so interesting. I'm gonna go and read all about that after this.
I didn't know it before I moved there, and my husband ran into the Austrian honorary consul who told him, so. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank all of you. I'm excited to hear your work.
Thank you. And now I'm gonna hand it over to Julian Tepper.
Everybody, thanks Paige, and thanks everyone. This is really nice. I have a new novel out. It's called Between the Records, and I guess briefly, my father's a musician, and my brother and I, my brother who's here, if you can spot him in this crowd, we played in a band for a long time, and this is a fictionalization of our family's rock and roll story. And I guess one thing that I'll tell you before, maybe I'll put this in the text afterwards, but in the book I fictionalized the making of a record we actually made. And so this record was reissued in conjunction with the book, and you can listen to the music that's being made in the book and stream it. We had a band called The Natural History, and I'll put in the text later, but I'm going to pick up in the middle. The brothers at the center of the novel are, they're on the road, and they've just departed South by Southwest. And I picked the section because everyone is more or less at home, and this is a section in which travel is right there on the page, so I thought it might bring a little pleasure. I was at the wheel, Adam was sleeping in the passenger seat, Abe was passed out in the back. There weren't any other cars on the road at 4 o'clock west on the I-10. In the far distance, lightning intermittently brightened the sky. I couldn't see well, but the band had been through this part of the country so many times before, and I knew that there was arid land and cacti and mesas, the iconic imagery of the area that often found its way onto postcards and was truly beautiful. In places like these, however, I couldn't help but worry about breaking down, as our van's geographic preference for mechanical failures was the middle of nowhere, and those past breakdowns had scarred me. The lightning, which 15 minutes before had seemed to be as far away as the next time zone, was doing more to impact the night sky, so that with every burst of the surrounding darkness was shot through with light and I could confirm the mesas. And were we heading straight towards the storm? A light rain started up. The drops were faint at first and I didn't have to use the wipers, but then the rain began falling harder. It seemed as if the headlights weren't up to doing their job. I shifted forward in my seat, sitting up straight. My hands moved from a casual 6 o'clock position to a more alert 11 and 1. This is a lot of bullshit, I thought. Certainly the last thing a person driving through Texas in the middle of the night needs. Why were we driving at this hour instead of sleeping in a motel? Because we had to get all the way to Los Angeles for a show this evening. The thing was, it wasn't easy for us to get a gig outside Austin before, during, or after the festival. There were just so many bands on the road, all of them looking to perform in a nearby town, and our booker's thinking was to get us as far away from the swarm as quickly as possible. At least that's what he told us. Fact was, he'd never gotten the band into anywhere within 500 miles of Austin after the festival, and this time he was sending us 1,337 miles, nearly half the distance of the country. Now the lightning seemed to be only a town ahead. I couldn't see well through the windshield. The rain was coming down hard. And was there water rising on the road? Yes, it was probably a quarter-inch deep, but a minute later it must have been up to 2 inches and then 4 inches a minute after that. Were we going to die out here in a flash flood? You okay, Adam asked, stirring. Yeah, I'm fine, I replied. Lightning bolts were striking the ground directly to the left and to the right of the van, though, explosions that sounded like detonating bombs. But Adam had always been a great sleeper, and he licked his lips, adjusted his pillow, and closed his eyes again. Might as well let him sleep, I thought. It's that, or inform him that he's probably about to die. And why do that? His hysteria wasn't going to make this situation any easier. I estimated about 6 to 8 inches of water on the road. How many more before the van gave up? 2, maybe 3. The tires were working very hard. Kaboom, crack, bam. Wow, said Abe, emerging from the back like some kind of Jim Henson creation. He put on his glasses and leaned in closer. A lot of water, huh? A bit, I replied. You want to pull over? No, I want to get to the other side of this. Kaboom, crack, bam. All right, Abe said. This kind of rain can't go on forever. I guess not. It won't. Kaboom, crack, bam. Abe said, I think you should pull over. Pull over where? We're in a fucking river. I'm getting to the other side of this. There had nearly been in at least a dozen life-threatening weather-related accidents over the hundreds of thousands of miles we'd driven over the years. Blizzards in western Idaho and eastern Tennessee and Connecticut. We had survived them all, and we were going to survive this too. Boom, crack, kaboom. Fuck, said Abe. Adam asked me if I was sure I didn't want to get off the road and wait this out. Yes, I'm sure. Everyone just be quiet. We're almost there. Just hold on and we'll get through it. The van was traveling at 9 miles per hour, the wheels almost fully submerged in water. Another minute of torrential rain and the forming river would pick up the entire vehicle, and that would be it. Goodbye, Mom, and goodbye, Dad. Another rock and roll fatality. Hope it leads to some bona fide mythologizing, good royalties, and a better retirement. With love, your son, Jules. The engine was making a new sound, a kind of groaning. Was the van going to break down right here in the storm? Oh, please don't. Come on, please keep going. Get us out of this. You can do it. Please keep going. Is that the van, Adam asked? Yes, I said. Fuck us, whispered Abe. Boom, crack, kaboom. God damn it. I peered straight down at my window. The wheels were gone. Fucking river comes out of nowhere. It's bullshit. I'm not dying this way. Are we going to die, Adam said. Shut up, Abe and I yelled in unison. In the not too far distance, I could see 2 beams of light getting closer and closer by the second. I took a breath. The lights, I could identify what they were now. These were headlights, but if a car could be driving towards us at such speeds from out there, then, and at the next moment, the downpour weakened to a drizzle and the water began to recede and the lightning flashes were at our backs. As if we'd gone through some portal dreamt up by James Cameron, I could almost make out a translucent curtain to the rear through which the bad weather continued to rage. I was drenched in sweat and shaky, somewhere between tears and laughter. Holy fuck, I thought that was it, that we were done for. I'll stop there. See, it's good to be home, isn't it? It's dangerous out there.
Thank you so much, Julian. I've actually done that. I've sat in a band van and driven from LA to South by Southwest.
Oh, my.
Oh yeah, not in, I mean, I think I was like 22, but not in a storm like that, but that's very vivid. And it's actually starting to storm quite intensely in Nairobi. It's rain season, so every night I go to bed to these crazy storms. So that was perfect. I'm gonna put the link to Julian's book in the chat. There we go. Thanks so much, Julian. And now I'm going to pass it over to Lulu Miller. Over to you, Lulu.
All right.
Oh, there you are.
Hello. Oh my gosh, Paige. Thank you so much for putting this together. Like, wow. I just feel like, how exotic is it to even be transported to all these places? Like a windshield with rain on an open road just felt like the most surreal, delicious thing. All of these. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. I was closing my eyes and furrowing my brows because that's how I hear and get to travel. But that was out of pleasure. Sorry if that freaked anyone out. So yeah, I'm coming at you here from Chicago, and I have a book. Hold on. I just published this book last week. First book, probably my only book. It's called Why Fish Don't Exist, and it's all true. I've been a science reporter for many years, and this is one of the wackiest stories I've ever heard. And my hope, it's about this sort of mad scientist from the 1800s, and I wrote it to try to sort of feel like a dark fairy tale that happens to be true. And it's basically about how we navigate chaos. There's a little bit about my own life in there. And best of all, there's an illustration for each chapter that my friend Kate did. However, I know I should read from it, but I'm not going to. But I hope it reads like a thriller and it's fun, and I would love it if you check it out. But today was really gloomy in Chicago, and was just one of the days that was like hitting me harder in all this. I'm sure for most of you, it's been up and down. And I started thinking about this piece that I published about a year ago that I felt like I needed to hear. So I'm gonna share it with you. It's very short. So this piece came about, the rapper LL Cool J, I noticed was turning 50 about a year ago. And I was like, wow, he's 50. And his name stands for Ladies Love Cool James. And I thought, they do love Cool James. He's got great beats. He's universally fairly beloved. And I started thinking, well, what else do ladies love universally? And so I compiled this list in honor of his birthday of 50 other things that ladies love. Number 1, LL LaCroix. Number 2, LL south-facing rooms. LL jurisdiction over the space between their uterine walls. LL when you take out the trash. LL how you can go into the sidewalk chalk drawings in Mary Poppins. LL dusk. LL not getting Frenched by their bosses. LL ferns. LL getting paid the same amount as men for doing the same job. LL high thread counts. LL that moment when they first wake up and look outside and see branches swaying and register only that they are skin on sheets, skin on sheets, skin on sheets. LL when they hear an owl. LL when they see a seal. LL not getting groped on the subway. LL pretending that humanity doesn't exist. LL wolves. LL that red and white striped string they tie around boxes of pastries. LL deliberating intensely over which stamps to buy at the post office. LL when you believe her. LL silk. LL bread, LL consent, LL how you can't really remember physical pain, LL the smell of night blooming jasmine, LL the idea that there is justice in evolution. Like in the case of those male ducks that got too sexually aggressive and eventually the female ducks evolved vaginas that had multiple passageways, most of which were dead ends, so that the male duck's sperm would have more trouble reaching the egg, thereby building a kind of retaliation into the female duck's very anatomy. LL champagne, LL pedicures, LL emojis, so fun, so small. LL when the postmen wear the shorts. LL Rihanna on a jet ski. LL getting fucked hard. LL long. LL watching the flames in a bonfire. LL not being judged on their appearance. LL how well trigonometry works. We're at 36 of 50. LL nachos, LL garden stores, LL misinterpreting accidents of evolution as proof that progress is the way of the world. LL weeping willows, LL screening phone calls, LL letting their voicemail box just fill and fill and fill until it is full and no one can get to them. LL Dolly Parton, LL the poems of Nikki Giovanni, LL scotch fucking tape, LL the feeling you get after yoga, although not necessarily yoga. LL Enya, if L's are being honest with themselves. LL putting their feet up on a stool. All right, now we're at 48. LL that temperature outside that feels like no temperature at all. LL the feeling they get after swimming and actual swimming, particularly the feeling of pushing off from a dock and gliding out into cool lake water, leaving everything behind them, friends, lovers, parents, children, coworkers, neighbors, all society, even the trees, and swimming out so far that it all disappears, all human history and all human wrongs, including their own. And then the big white smoky trail of it all evaporates into the clouds until the only thing that's left is them in the water, and all that they are is breath wrapped in skin. And sometimes if they just keep swimming for long enough, this odd thing happens where they swear they start to be able to breathe underwater. And they know it sounds crazy or like they're making it up, but they get into this rhythm where they swear they start to be able, where they don't need to surface for air. And as they're practicing it, stroke, 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 to double check that it really is happening, stroke, 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 they suddenly think of all the people behind them on the shore. And so turn back and begin paddling toward them all, toward the grass and the trees. And what's odd is that as they are swimming, they are not thinking about the cloud of hate emanating from their species. Instead, all they are thinking about is the tendons, the billions and billions of tendons jack frosting their way up, billions of bones that over the centuries have overturned so much sheer matter, pyramids and canals, and even occasionally oppression, so that as they climb back up onto that splintery wooden dock, their own tendons stretched and limber, they feel temporarily hopeful, perhaps due to oxygen deprivation, about rejoining their kind, which, if nothing else, has a scrappy ability to push and push and push until it has prevailed through unthinkable chaos. LL, tiny porcelain bowls. The end.
I have about 40 tiny porcelain balls right
Well, I mean, like, they're great.
I can't reach any, but I assure you there are many over there. Thank you so much, Lulu. I get that thing about the ducks. I'm gonna have like the best 2 a.m. Wikipedia Googling after
Yes.
this.
Yeah,
That's
joy.
fascinating. Thank you. I loved looking around and seeing, sorry, I'm gonna try and copy and paste this link while I'm talking, which we've learned I'm not good at. I liked seeing everybody's faces. Everybody was like, oh yeah, and agreeing and laughing along as you were reading. That was fantastic. Okay, so I am pasting the link to Lulu's book right there in the chat. And that's all. So thank you all so much for coming. If you've never come to Les Bleus before and you would like to join us on another Saturday night, because we're just going to keep going every Saturday night, please put your email in the chat and I can add you to the list. And a huge thank you to Adrienne and Jeffrey and Jennifer and Julian and Lulu for reading for us tonight. Please, Justin says, don't let it end. Did I just say Justin? I read Justin. Julian and Lulu, if I said Justin, sorry. Now I've totally lost my train of thought. But thank you all for coming and for listening, and to those of you who read for reading. And please support all of the readers tonight by purchasing their books through bookshops. You can also support independent bookstores. I appreciate you all for coming and keeping this community going at a time when we all need it. I know for me, this is really something that I look forward to all week. So thank you for continuing to come. So thank you again to Adrienne, Jennifer, Lulu, Jeffrey, and Julian. That was amazing. And everybody have a great rest of your night.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yay, Paige. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you so much.
And then we get our applause.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Yay, Paige.
Fun. Keep doing this all day. Okay.